Good morning. Before we begin, I want to recognize the great loss that was experienced in Lahaina, Hawaii, on the island of Maui. At last count, there were 93 people who have lost their lives, and in addition to that, we lost a great amount of our own heritage, including the Honganji mission of Lahaina, the Jodo mission of Lahaina, the Banyan Tree, the Waiula Church. For all of that and more, I'd like for us to all sit in a moment of silence. So please join me in Gassho as I ring the bell. Thank you. I actually gave this talk last week at White River. I actually told the people at White River that they didn't have to come if they came to both temples because they had already seen the talk. But it actually takes a little bit different of a turn in light of the events of the last week. I started by talking about my experience converting to Buddhism. And over the years, I've heard all of these stories about convert experiences, and I heard a saying that when you convert to Buddhism, the Buddha for the first year is right in front of you, and then it gets further and further away. And what I've learned as a practitioner over now 17 years, wow, is that that's actually the working of the ego, right? It's hard to describe to people what it's like if you've lived in Buddhism your entire life, what it's like to convert, because you're seeking something else out from what you've known. And it requires you to learn a lot more about not just what you are approaching, but what you came from, your own heritage. And the way that people learn in America usually from this, if they don't have a teacher, if they don't wander into a temple to do this, is through books. And I think all of you have the experience of going through the bookstores and seeing, a couple of rows of like Buddhism, Tibetan, one row of Buddhism, Zen, and then a couple books that are like Buddhism, other. So it's pretty hard to hear about Jodo Shinshu in America. But a lot of these books are self-help books, right? They're about you experiencing some kind of suffering, loss, depression, indirection, not knowing where you're going. And hearing the story of the Buddha from the perspective of all of these different practitioners in the context of you, right? And now you get to this idea of compassion, of wisdom. And you hear these stories about this Buddha, Shakyamuni, who exhibited this idea of perfect wisdom and compassion. And a lot of these traditions follow what we call the path of sages. You are on your way to becoming a Buddha in this lifetime if you follow this advice, if you listen to this teacher. And there are all of the, you'll hear from lamas and roshis and rinpoches and all of these people that are higher than we will ever experience in our own lives in terms of that path of sages. And for a convert to hear that, and to hear that you could get there, it kind of feeds that ego of like, well, maybe I'm the next one, right? Maybe I could be the next Buddha. Maybe I'm the next in line, like I'm Neo in the Matrix, right? The one that gets called out that suddenly is the one that's perfectly wise and compassionate. And I think that's where the practice of Jodo Shinshu was the best for me, because it said, no, no, you can't do that. Let me explain to you what wisdom and compassion mean. Not even that, but what perfection means. The story of Shakyamuni Buddha is someone that had 84,000, which is to say an infinite number of ways to bring people into compassion. And was so perfect at it that he himself could enlighten someone that was in his presence, knew exactly what you needed in order to be that compassionate being. And when we talk about Mappo, the idea of that we live in this age that's so far away from that we can, that we can't even hear the message. We only have to, we are only able to know that it existed. We're so far separated from this that every time I think I'm being compassionate, I want to kick myself 5 seconds later. I feel like every time that I think that I did something right, I know that I did something bigger that's wrong in the side of it. And isn't that kind of the practice? Isn't that what we are here to think about? Isn't that why we come here once a week, to think about our relationship to our religion and what it is that we think and believe? So it connects us with being human. And so I want to tell this story to start about something that happened to me about a week and a half ago. I was walking along a pathway in Ocean Shores. So just like a little park around a lake, and my wife Rosalie and I come to this place fairly often and just do laps around the lake. Very pretty, nice and relaxing, get a little exercise, it's great. One thing that Ocean Shores is known for is the deer. Like they are iconic, they're all over the place. When you go there for the first time, it's amazing, and when you spend years there, it's less amazing. Because they come and they eat all of the vegetation, and they move, and they jump fences and things like that. So the locals are like, deer, yeah. But it's amazing for you to be near these animals that are just so docile and so used to there being people, because they're all over Ocean Shores, the people and the deer. So on this pathway, we find a mother deer, a doe, and her 2 fawns. Right? That's pretty normal for this time of season, that the mother is still leading her babies around. And the mother and one of the fawns are in front of us. And as we turn off the path, there's a 3rd deer that's sitting there. All 3 of them obviously are looking at us, because we're in nature, we're the interlopers here. And we realize that we have caught ourselves in between these 3 things. And we think, okay, let's just cut through and hope that everything is okay. So we cut through between them, and the deer that's on the side of the pathway goes further into the woods there. And we're like, that's not a good sign. Maybe we should go back and let them reunite, and things will be okay. So in my brain, I'm thinking, I don't want to be responsible for a small deer being abandoned by their mother, and what's the karma for that, right? We don't believe in it that way, but it's still the thing, right? We want to believe that we're good people. So we backtrack and sort of leave them some space so that they can get back together. Please, please just go so that we don't have to hold this in our, on our shoulders. And the 3 of them sort of freeze. And the mother and and the one baby start walking off, and the other one just sort of ducks down into a bush and hides. And we're like, well, that's not good either. So we decide we're going to walk forward sort of behind those two deer, just get out of the park and just hope that it resolves itself. And we see the mother and the one baby up in the clearing. And the mother looks at me as if to say, "Did you just eat my baby?" Obviously, I did not. But I found myself looking this deer in the eye and telling people what I try to tell people every day. I'm really a good person. Look at me. Like, I'm trying to get your family back together. Like, why won't you let me help you? And they sit there and stare at us for a while. And we think, okay, maybe we just need to get out of this area and things will resolve themselves. So we walk a different way, completely out of sight of the deer, and then we start to walk home. And it's been about 20 minutes since this happens. And we get to the bridge that we cross to get back to where we're staying. And we see two deer standing at the top of the bridge. And I get to the top of the bridge, and the one deer looks at me, and I realize it's the same two deer. And now my heart begins to sink, because I've heard all of these stories about, mothers, abandoning their children of all different species because they had been exposed to humans, to human contact. And now I'm starting to think that I killed this baby deer that I was just, trying to leave alone. And I'm worried, and I'm sad, and I'm stuck in my head about all of this. And about 30 seconds after that, I hear, "Ah!" And I turn around, and that second baby deer is just walking up the bridge to get back to where they were. Oh, good. Okay. I'm now okay again, right? I got stuck in what we call our Dharma school, what we say to our Dharma school kids is monkey mind, right? I have my brain cycling 1,000 different directions to try to make myself look good in this situation, to relieve myself of the guilt that I have for the things that I've done. And it's taken me to the point that I'm trying to bargain with a deer as to whether or not I'm a good person. So the three of them reunite again, and they turn to us and look at us as if to say, "You can go now. This is all over." And that was kind of all that I needed. That was a Buddha's lesson in itself, right? Shakyamuni Buddha was so adept at this that the story goes that for his last sermon, the one that he gave just before dying, the animals of the forest came. Right? They recognized that he was such a compassionate being, that he could bring all people into enlightenment. We can try to do that, right? We can try to be wise, and we can try to be compassionate, but we have to know our limitations. And this is where the story turns back to the story of Maui. All of this happened for a reason, and not a spiritual something off here in the world. Humans, both individually and collectively, not just within that village, not just within the island of Maui, state of Hawaii, but around the world, contributed to the consequences of this action. We all have that there, and no amount of telling people that we're good people is going to bring it back. This is what Buddhism is about, like recognizing that we are interdependent, that we have, that things are impermanent, and knowing that this town has to be rebuilt, right? That The first instinct that I had was, I should look at flights to Maui and see if I can help. I can't help. I don't know how to build anything. I don't know. I mean, what am I going to do? Give a sermon? There's nothing for me to do except feel for the people that are experiencing this the most. I'm only going to do damage by being there. And we're going to talk about the actions that the Buddhist Churches of America and our temple are going to take to do that. But there's going to be a lot of ego tied up in what happens next. And I think that it's important to understand this because it's a way for us to understand the practice of compassion. That the best thing in my mind at this point is to give money to the people who know about the place, who know what needs to happen in this place. But also to understand that we are all a part of the same ecosystem. That there is no one simple thing that is the compassionate act to do. That we all have to work together with the intention of everybody living in harmony. So that is my message for today. Thank you. Please make it a good week, and please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. Namanda. Namanda.